New today, CIA Director Bill Burns is expected to soon meet in Europe with leaders from Israel, Egypt, and Qatar to negotiate the release of more hostages in Gaza. The Biden administration hoping an agreement could lead to an extended ceasefire that could eventually bring an end to the war. Joining me now is former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO and MSNBC Chief International Analyst, our good friend Admiral James Stavridis. So, Admiral, big question. Why is the CIA director leading these discussions? Because isn't that something for the Secretary of State or the White House Middle East envoy? I'm curious the CIA significance here.
Well, I'm so glad you asked. And the answer is actually two words. It's Bill Burns. It's who he is. He's a career diplomat, two-time ambassador, once to Jordan, speaks beautiful, fluent Arabic, so truly knows the region. Also, and when I worked with him as Supreme Allied Commander of NATO, he was our ambassador in Moscow, so he's very familiar with dealing with difficult regimes. And in addition to all of that, he was at one time the number 2 at State Department, the highest that any career foreign service officer has attained. So he is in every sense a diplomat. Now you combine that with his time significantly now in the intelligence world. He is truly the whole package. He's the perfect person to negotiate in this tricky, tricky situation, Alex.
So then let me ask you quickly, Qatar's prime minister is part of these meetings, but his counterparts, his intelligence counterparts from both Egypt and Israel are the ones in the meetings. Do you think it's because they know him so well, or is this something about what they do, what they bring to the table that will make this interesting and unique?
It's a bit of both, Alex. Anytime the head of intelligence for a nation is involved, you know that going in, the best capable sight picture is obtained by that individual. And secondly, the intelligence folks stand alongside their military counterparts. So Bill Burns, as director of CIA, spends a lot of time working with and around Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, with Jake Sullivan, the national security advisor. And that's true in each of the other countries that are involved in this negotiation. So it's kind of an interagency process. And therefore, again, the best person I can think of for our seat at the table is certainly Director Bill Burns.
Okay, a very hearty endorsement there. Let me ask you about Israel, as you well know, reportedly offering that 60-day pause in fighting for in exchange for the phased release of the more than 100 remaining hostages, a proposal that Hamas rejected. They're saying the next hostage release should include a permanent ceasefire. Given your understanding, Admiral, of these negotiations, are you at all optimistic about a deal, and are you thoughtful on what the sticking points might be?
I am cautiously optimistic that we'll get some further number of hostages released. And that, I think, is why Director Burns is involved. I think he wouldn't go unless there was a realistic chance of moving the needle on the hostages. I think, however, a permanent ceasefire is not going to be put in place at this point. And there are really two reasons. One is the continuing presence of the Hamas leadership inside Gaza. I could see this thing ending, Alex, if they were allowed to leave and go to a different nation altogether, perhaps to Qatar. So watch that spot, Hamas leadership, real sticking point. And the second one is that incredible complex of tunnels that the Hamas has built under Gaza. Gaza is only 20 miles long, 6 miles wide, 400 miles of tunnels underneath it. The Israelis are going to insist those be decommissioned, blown up, flooded, whatever. Those are going to be the two real sticking points in the conversation.
Do you have any idea how many miles of tunnels have been destroyed already in the last month since October 7th?
I do. It's a tiny number. It perhaps
really?
10%, perhaps 10%, because it's hard, number one. And number two, Alex, you'll understand this. The hostages are somewhere in that tunnel complex. So the Israelis are moving with extraordinary caution, but actually destroyed 10% or so. That number will go up over time. Obviously, it has to, but it's going to be a major military objective before this campaign can be deemed to be completed on the Israeli side.
Among 6 legally binding orders on Friday, the UN's top court offered a stunning rebuke, ordering Israel to ensure it will not commit acts of genocide in Gaza, but stopping short of calling for an immediate ceasefire. Many Israeli leaders forcefully pushed back on the perception of genocide, but the association with genocide prompts this question, sir. Does this affect Israel's standing and the U.S. support for the war against Hamas?
I don't think this ruling by the International Criminal Court, the International Court of Justice, is going to have a significant impact. And here's why. Going in, it was clear this was going to be a tribunal that was overwhelmingly non-sympathetic to the Israeli side of this conversation. I think actually the court landed kind of in the middle. Short of calling this genocide, but coming down very strongly, correctly in my view, behind the Israeli obligations to care for the civilian population in Gaza. In effect, the court kind of played the ball down the middle here, but I don't see it having a significant effect in any real dimension, Alex.
Okay, Admiral James Stavridis, our good friend, thank you so much, sir, for your insights.